Hey, it's David Blackman with the Energy Question today. Hope everybody out there is having a good day. And with me today is my special guest, an old friend who we haven't talked to since I think February, Armando Cavanha. You are a student advisor, right, at Catholic University in Rio, but 40 years experience at Petrobras and elsewhere in the oil and gas business, right?
Yes, right. Yes,
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. And Armando, of course, I know many of you are familiar with Armando. He's one of the most prolific podcasters related to energy I've ever seen. He seems like he pops out, I don't know, half a dozen episodes a week almost. It's probably not that many, but it's just very frequent. I mean, you're really busy.
Yes, I'm doing a lot of them. And it's interesting because some in Portuguese now increasing a little bit the portion of Brazilian communication. And then with some friends from the United States and Europe too. It's a pleasure to be here, David, today. And you are one of the best persons in terms of energy analysis. It's fantastic. I love your texts and your podcasts. So I follow you every day.
Well, thank you. That's so nice. Very kind, and probably too kind. Too kind. I mean, I often feel like I'm having a hard time keeping my head above water. There's so much happening, of course, in the energy and political world and as it relates to energy. But there's been a lot happening down in South America as well.
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, there's this huge project, the pipeline, natural gas pipeline project between Brazil and Argentina. And of course, this recent dust up between Argentinian President Javier Milei and Brazilian President Lula, in which he just popped off and called Lula a communist. I mean, are the political tensions, is there any concern that the political tensions may interfere with that big natural gas project?
Yes. There is a high tension between them. They hate each other. And it's impressive. And Milei is doing a very good job. Milei is coming to solve some bureaucratic problems that Argentina has. And so it's a very strong guy and a clear vision. And in Brazil, unfortunately, I need to say that's my opinion, personal opinion. It's not good, not the good way. It's increasing the size of state interference and things like that. I don't like that. But anyway, this gas from Argentina is important for Brazil because our pre-salt is not so, let's see, we do not have too much natural gas in the pre-salts. It's much more, because carbonate formation is much more oil. It's a good portion of oil in the high level API. So that's the reason that we produce only 140 million barrels a day, million cubic meters a day of gas. It's too little to Brazil. Brazil could be 30, 40 million cubic meters per day consumption, but it's the reality. And we have a pipeline from Bolivia to Brazil.
Right.
That in the past was 30 million cubic meters per day of gas coming from Bolivia to now. But nowadays is declining to almost 8, from 30 to 8.
Wow.
And we need more gas. And Argentina is a source of gas that could be interesting for us. But these political issues are interfering, no doubts. And Bolivia and Argentina are doing a very good partnership job. And maybe Brazil, instead of go directly to Argentina, could go to Bolivia, buying gas of Argentina through Bolivia. It's not
through Bolivia,
of course. Yeah. But at the same time, there are many conversations between Brazil and especially south part of Brazil and Argentina to conclude some pipelines to Brazil. Could be very interesting. South part, especially because a rich part of the country that the consumption is high and that we could have support of natural gas there.
Yeah, I mean, the great majority of the population in Brazil is in the southern part of the country, right? I mean, that's where Rio is, and Yeah,
Rio is more in the center, not
Is it? Okay.
exactly in the south, but the south, three states in the country, we call Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, and Paraná that I live in, are the richest country. And of course, are the 4 richest countries, and they are in the south. And the consumption is very high, and the industry development. So it could be very attractive to have this backup gas. Why we do not have from pre-salt more gas production so Brazil is investing to do that. But the investments in Brazil, David, sometimes not so clear and easy because the state is very present in the investments, and the interference of states and private investors see this fluctuation of interference and see, oh my God, I will put my money here. 4 years later, maybe the government changed for a different way of thinking, and how can I do that? So that's the key point for investors here.
Well, that's becoming a problem here in the United States. We keep going back and forth between political parties and administrations. And of course, in this current administration, we've seen the Biden philosophy be a lot more interventionist in the economy and in investment decisions. I mean, the latest example is this ridiculous pause in permitting on LNG facilities that's been in effect since January. And, I mean, when investors see that and people don't seem to understand it, of course, these people in the Biden administration don't understand it. But when, you're talking about multi-billion-dollar investments in long-term projects that are going to span across 3 different presidential terms, companies, investors have to have confidence in consistency of policy. And so, I mean, that's the same kind of thing you're running into in Brazil. This lack of this back and forth and lack of consistency and confidence in the legal system. And it makes it really hard to justify multi-billion-dollar investment.
Yeah. But when people see the regulatory system that can change every year for one side to another side, so how can I put my money in this project? It's so complicated. It's not complicated, really.
But Petrobras has had success here over the past few years in attracting investment in the offshore, haven't they? I mean, I know they've made several pretty big deals, partnership, joint ventures out there offshore in the deep water, right?
Right. Yes. Petrobras in this case is a success. It really is. And thanks to the past concept of joint ventures with big companies like Shell, Exxon, Chevron, BP, all big Total Energies, Repsol, all of them are here. And they are not only with Petrobras, they are investing alone in projects and other deep water opportunities, especially in the east part of the country, not in the north. That's another problem. Equatorial margin, that's another theme. But in the south, the volumes, we have around 12 billion barrels reserves in situ to be.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a very. The United States is 40 or 50 billion.
Right.
It's much bigger, of course. But this 12 for us is very important to produce.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 to 4 million barrels a day with a consumption of 2.5. So we can export a part of the crude oil. And so Brazil's in a good shape in terms of deep water. Technology in Petrobras is good. The partnerships with providers, first-class providers, first-tier providers. So it's a very strong relationship with a long time, more than 4 decades. So it's a good position for Petrobras, no doubts. The challenge for Petrobras is to face the energy transition, that's so-called energy transition, but this transition is not so easy to do, no, David? So
no, it's not.
How can we replace things like oil, petrochemical feedstock? It's almost impossible now. Maybe one day we have something that can replace it, but nowadays it's impossible. Heavy logistics, ships, trains, trucks, how can we replace these things now? So oil, in this case, is irreplaceable at that time.
Well, for natural gas, let's just talk about that in that context. You need more natural gas. Is natural gas, I mean, what's the main use for natural gas in Brazil? Is it in power generation mainly, or is it?
Yeah, we have electricity in Brazil. 50% is from hydro, wind 12%, solar 17%, biomass. Okay, 70% of electricity in Brazil is come from this, let's see, renewables.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's real renewables. Yeah.
Yes, very strong position. And at the same time, Brazil has more than 300 thermoelectric generators, plants to generate from natural gas.
Yeah.
Because of course, if you have more renewable energy, you need more contingency and backup systems. So that's the reason that we have gas. We use gas not too much, but a good portion in the industry to move industry, especially in remote areas and things like that. So gas has a very strong position, not because the volume, that's a small volume yet, but because the importance, a very strategic gas for us. In some states, far from the hydro center, we use gas to generate electricity.
Is the hydro, does it mainly come in the Amazon basin from the tributaries and from the Amazon itself?
In south part, very close to my city, we have Foz do Iguaçu, the Paraná rivers, Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil center. And there's a huge hydro generator called Itaipu. It's a monster. and several other big ones in the center of the country. And Amazon, yes, we have an Amazon, but in the center of the country, we have hydro generation in several different places. So it's a very well distributed the hydro in Brazil. It's like God came here and put water in this country.
So is the government in Brazil, of course, here in the United States, the Biden administration has made this big, huge push for offshore wind generation, which is the most ridiculous and most costly form of power generation. I just wonder if the Lula government is doing anything similar to that.
Yes, are doing the northeast part of the country. That wind is constant and the region is poor. So there are 12 or 14 projects, big projects, huge, being studied by the environmental area in Brazil. Some just released and people are investing. So we have 12% of our energy, electricity coming from wind, and it's from these areas of offshore wind. I agree with you. I don't like too much this solution. I prefer solar. If you could compare, solar is much better. But they love wind. I don't know why. It's so complicated and so.
And it's the offshore wind particularly. You're going to be replacing those turbines and towers every 10 years. I mean, people think you're going to build this stuff and it's all going to be there forever. You're going to have to, particularly offshore with the saltwater environment. I mean, it's just such a nonsensical thing and so totally unnecessary. It drives me crazy. I mean, it really drives me nuts.
Yeah, and only time will show us these errors and things like that, because now people are involved in some emotional decisions and wind, renewable. Okay, we will not replace the energy that we have today, the formal ones. Coal, natural gas, oil. It's impossible. We can add, we can put more energy with them, but take in consideration that we need contingency and backup systems. So what's the real total cost of this solution?
Yeah.
That's the point.
So Brazil, of course, I mean, people in the United States, I think, don't pay enough attention to what's going on in Brazil because it's such an enormous country. It's actually a little bigger than the continental United States in terms of geography. And how many people in Brazil? 100 million?
200 million.
200 million. Holy moly.
Yeah.
And of course,
it's just 300. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, man, 200 million. So, of course, Brazil is also one of the original members of BRICS, the BRICS alliance, along with China and Russia, India and South Africa. And I know that, of course, now you've added Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Iran and the UAE as well to that coalition. Argentina was going to join and then wasn't going to join. And I think now they've decided they're going to join again, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is a powerful trade alliance that is heavily influenced, I think, by China,
Yes.
because as the economic powerhouse really of all those powerfully economic countries. I wonder if you're seeing in Brazil now, I mean, I've got to believe China is making great inroads in Brazil in terms of investments and in these renewable energy spaces, right? Mm-hmm. If for nothing else, just in terms of supplying the lithium and other minerals that are required for all this stuff.
Well, the first point, BRICS with 5 countries now is stable. They're trying to make some change to use internal currency instead of petrodollar. It's a difficult movement. It's not simple, but they are doing these efforts, and maybe something can happen soon. And growing this group means more complicated administration of that. With 5 countries is just too much complicated. Imagine with 40. They are planning 40 countries in this group. I cannot see something feasible to manage the decisions, and with Argentina, Brazil, so opposite mindsets now because they change positions every 4 years. And the other part that you mentioned by China influence in this situation, especially in Brazil, yes, China has in Brazil is owner of several ports along the coast. Several ports. So the dominance of China in terms of logistics is very, very huge here. So they are buying, they are clever, they are intelligent in this level. So how can I assure that my goods I can export to the country if I do not have ports? So control the ports, you have this doors open. But another point that the dependence of China, yeah, I see that's the same in the United States. I'm not sure the components that you use in turbines and plates and energy components, all things come from China. So
Right.
the dependency is high, very high. So this influence can drive our decisions and this group of decisions based on China thinking model. Maybe this way.
So in the United States, where electric vehicles are concerned, we have a bunch of automakers here in the United States. And I don't know, does Brazil, and we're very concerned, the administration's concerned, everyone's concerned about China eventually bringing, high quality and inexpensive electric vehicles into the US market and really disadvantaging our domestic auto companies. Is that a concern in Brazil? I don't know if Brazil has automakers. I assume you must have domestic car makers in Brazil.
Not Brazilians of that. They are all from the United States.
Okay.
Chevrolet, Ford,
Yeah.
from Asia, Honda, the same in the United States, but we do not have own Brazilian ones. And at the same time, we are importing much more everyday EVs from China.
Sure.
But making part of this manufacturing processes here in Brazil by BYD and other several Chinese. Tesla is here, but it's not strong. And,
Yeah,
I don't know.
they haven't really focused there.
Yeah, exactly. But some important point when we talk about EVs in Brazil, why is so difficult to implement EVs in Brazil? The infrastructure, we do not have a good energy in every place. So how can I have a trip and how can I charge my car 100 kilometers from here? It's not as simple as the United States. It's much more simple in this case. And another point that's very relevant is that more than 5 decades ago, Brazil started the program of ethanol.
Yes,
and
right.
Ethanol is strong. I have a number here. Ethanol, we have 27% of gasoline is ethanol.
Yeah.
It's a baseline. So, and our cars are flexible. You can put 0 of ethanol or 100% of ethanol in the same motor. So this was the solution that is disruptive, was something that, and this for me is the renewable movement that's important. At the same time, when we use ethanol to a motor, we are not using to food and to other parts that could be
right. Yeah.
So it's another discussion. And biofuels, biodiesel, for instance, we use 14% in diesel. So it's the maximum position that we have. And support in poor parts of the country the generation of biodiesel. It's interesting.
So what crop is used to make ethanol in Brazil? Is it sugarcane?
Sugar.
Yeah, that's a lot more efficient than corn.
Yeah, much more efficient than corn. But at the same time, we are importing ethanol from Sacramento, from the United States. Unbelievable. Because to move from the south, when we produce sugarcane ethanol, to the north part of the country, is cheaper to come from Sacramento and come to Brazil. That is incredible.
That's amazing. That is incredible. Golly.
Unbelievable.
But that's why we have this global trade. You just never know what's going to be the most economic thing to do until you get there. Right?
Yeah, but the global trade using what kind of fuel to move this?
Diesel. Of course, they have adopted, the shipping industry did move to a mandated, a cleaner, a less polluting form of diesel here in recent years. And so the emissions are a lot lower, but still diesel. And it's hard to see. I know some ships have converted to using ethanol and LNG, and I don't know what all else, but it's really going to be diesel for the time being. And people don't think about that aspect of it either.
No.
But it's just the hypocrisy of the whole thing. It drives me nuts. So we are here. So I wonder also in the United States, of course, we have this, it's almost a Watergate-like situation with Joe Biden and his own party trying to force him to withdraw from the nomination. And that's still ongoing today. It's getting more intense every day. Is that making news? I'm just curious. Is it making news in Brazil, and how are people reacting to it?
Totally. We follow the United States every day. The United States for Brazilians is a reference country. So we follow, and we have almost the same position of Americans. So we have half of country supporting Biden, half of
Right.
country
Yeah.
supporting. But the point for us is that so clear that this guy has problems to follow this situation.
Oh,
So sometimes, sometimes, what can I help? How can I help this guy to decide these things? Because it's a problem for the United States. Imagine he win. Imagine that he can win. So weak. So
yeah. No, and how's he
awesome.
going to serve another 4 years? I mean, he can barely function today.
And the
And
vice president is not so strong in
no,
our case.
that is a very kind way to put it, Armando. You're so tactful. Yeah, that's a very kind way to put it about our vice president. She has not displayed a very high degree of competency over the past 3.5 years.
And
It's about the thing.
and we in Brazil, how can we see United States as a reference that is for us, and being, let's see, driven by people with not too much strongest.
Well, it's almost as if we intentionally choose the worst possible people to take these offices. I mean, that's what we did in 2020 for sure. And the choices now, of course, are either Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And there's a lot of people who think the same thing about Donald Trump. And our system has become, I blame a lot of it on the news media, because it is such an unpleasant thing to be in politics now, because you have to constantly put up with false stories about you in the news media, or misleading stories at best. And some just intentionally false, as we saw during the Trump presidency. Repeatedly every day, just legion false stories in the news media. And it unfortunately, it all has the impact of discouraging really quality people who would actually be good leaders from running for these offices. And so you end up with these marginal folks who half the country hates and half the country won't say anything bad about. And it's really a polarizing situation that I believe is just almost entirely driven by the news media and its utter corruption.
And what we see from here, that the candidates to replace Biden in this run could be Michelle Obama and California Governor
Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, and when we see some videos from both, yeah, okay, they do not have the same problem that Biden has,
Right.
but I because David, see, United States for us is the center of capitalism.
Right.
It's the center of right wing. Always my life. I'm almost 60, 70. And so we cannot see the United States going to a different way. And we are seeing these doubts at this time. So this is something that pay attention to Brazilians. And we have more problems than the United States, of course, because we are fluctuating between left and right every 4 years. It's something very complicated for a country. But for the United States, it's unbelievable.
Well, it's undeniable that the Democratic Party is trying to move us to a different non-capitalistic system, and has made great strides in this administration doing it, with the government intervening particularly so heavily in the energy markets and picking winners and losers in that enormous piece of our economy. And that, of course, with all the ancillary impacts from the energy business. I mean, everything's involved in energy. Everybody relies on energy. So when the government intervenes so forcefully in the energy business, it's really intervening very forcefully across the entire economy. And I mean, if I think it's undeniable, if we give this administration another 4 years, our country is going to it will hold very little resemblance to what it did 4 years ago. And particularly from an economic standpoint and in the energy space. And that's what this whole global effort related to climate change and energy transition really is trying to drive, not just in the United States, but across the Western world. And so it's very disconcerting to me. And you and I have talked about it many times. I think everything they do has the obvious impact of rendering us dependent on China for our energy and energy security. And I think that the same thing's true in Brazil.
Good point. And what we see more than that is that the United States is exporting the, let's see, mining, not clean process to less wealthy countries, and trying to become clean in his region. But it's not true, because if you export something that make dust far from you, the atmosphere will bring back to you the same problem. Yeah. So it's not simple to understand these movements.
No, it really isn't. Somebody, I forget who I was watching or reading made a great point about the UK. Same thing's happening in the United Kingdom, of course. And I forget who it was. It certainly was not Rishi Sunak, but someone opposed to the Labour Party and the net zero policies in the UK was making that very point that we're not really cutting emissions. All we're doing is deindustrializing our economy and we're relocating the emissions to China and to a lesser extent to India and the Philippines and that whole
Africa,
Pacific Rim. And so, that's what's happening across the Western world. And, this election in the United States is really,
Crucial.
really crucial. And if it goes, if we reelect the Democrats, then it's inevitable that we're going to go in that direction and there will be no going back. So I always try to avoid saying any election is the most important election we've ever had, but this one really is. I just think it's kind of undeniable. So we'll certainly November, one way or another, is going to be a big month for all of us.
Yeah. That's clear for us. That's a crucial election. And that if we have the same trend that today they will confirm this regulatory systems, politics, and will be something difficult in the future.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, Armando, I just this has been fun. Let's do it again soon. Let's make a habit of this. It's so nice to talk to you again. I've learned so much from you over the years. And
let's combine each week 30 minutes.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it. We can just do an update every Thursday if you want to.
Oh, excellent.
That'd be good for me.
For me, it's a great pleasure. You know that I like this conversation.
Maybe we can alternate between our platform here and your platform on your podcast. We can just
no problem. Maybe your platform, because I'm transmitting my platform at the same time. Maybe your.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. Well, we'll just do that. Let's just plan on next Thursday at this time. Make a regular deal of it.
It's a deal.
All right. Hey, have a great week. And thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'm sorry we didn't get the questions and comments, but we'll do that next time. I apologize. I didn't think about it. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. Thanks to our great producer and friend, Stuart Turley and the Sandstone Group, and Eric Perel, our extraordinary producer. I'm David Blackman, and that's all for now. And we will end this stream.